So at this time, I'd like to welcome Rogelio Trevino with the Workforce Solutions of South Texas, Tequani Perez from Laredo College Cybersecurity Institute, Chris Sterling from the Select Secure Solutions, and Alistair Love from Panacea Strategy to the stage.
Rogelio Trevino, I'm the Executive Director for Workforce Solutions for South Texas, your local workforce development board. We're here in Laredo, but we also serve Jim Hogg County and Zapata County. And we're here to offer workforce development services to help you meet your small business needs as far as finding you a skilled and trained labor force. And we also are ready to provide training to our local labor force and provide support services to our labor force. But I get the honor of being the moderator for this session today. And when I was called and asked to do this and they gave me the topic, I was really excited about it, because I know that this is an area that all of us in one way or another have already been touched or have been impacted, or we know somebody that has been impacted when we're dealing with our information technology and our computer systems. And those of you that own small businesses, we all depend so much on technology. And as we see today's the changes in technology, we also see a lot of activity, I guess, in the bad guys out there who are hacking our systems. And so today we're very fortunate to have the experts in the area that have a lot of subject matter experts, and these gentlemen deal with it on a daily basis, and they help small businesses to prepare for cyber attacks and to grow in this area. But let me introduce our panel today. We have, sitting at far right, we have Mr. Chris Sterling. Mr. Sterling is with Select Solutions. He's got over 27 years in technology space, working in IT, OT with industrial control systems, Motorola, SCADA. Past 15 years has been solely focused on helping small business meet their security and technology needs. Then to my right, we have Mr. Tequani Perez. Mr. Perez is here with Laredo College. He is an assistant director for the Cybersecurity Institute at Laredo College. Some of his resume says he is a graduate or alumni of Laredo College, also Western Governors University alumni, ISC 2 member, and over 7 years in information technology and cybersecurity workforce. And then sitting in the middle of our panelists, we have Mr. Alistair Love, who is with Panacea Strategies. And Mr. Love, some of his professional qualifications include he is an Oracle alumni. He is a graduate of the Texas A&M International University MBA International Trade Program. He's Big Four Management Consulting, Technology Strategy and Advisory Services, Systems Integrator in Oracle, SAP, Microsoft, Salesforce, Workday, and other ecosystems. Over 20-year veteran of logistics in Laredo and Mexico at companies such as Expeditors, Robinson Transplace, and others. He's a Chief Technology Officer at Panacea Strategy, a boutique logistic technology consultancy with offices in Laredo, Nuevo Laredo, Monterrey, Guadalajara, Querétaro, and Mexico City. Panacea Strategy has been an active provider of cybersecurity solutions to the trucking, logistics, and customs brokerage communities in Laredo, Nuevo Laredo, and Mexico for the last 5 years. So would you please give our panelists a round of applause? We're really, like I say, we have a tremendous amount of knowledge and expertise. What we want to do is, in our time period, about 45 minutes that we have, we've got a series of questions that we're going to be asking our panelists to kind of work with us and help us provide information. We think that these questions we've developed are going to be the type of information that will help you take back to your businesses and help you prepare for the enhancement of your technology systems and to improve and grow your businesses, but also may provide you with some information that many of you kind of aren't even really aware of that you need to be asking. And those are some of the things we talked about when we were talking as preparing for this. We said many people, especially small businesses, aren't really prepared, don't really know what kind of things to ask when they're looking at cybersecurity. So we're gonna go ahead and get started with our panelists, and I think we can just leave it open, and you guys can pick up the question if you want, or if all three of you want to answer this question. But the first question I have is, why should business care about cybersecurity? Anybody want to handle that? Alistair.
Yeah, I think the first reason is business continuity. And so I use the term blood, sweat, and tears. Speaking with somebody just minutes ago, I'm empathetic to the plight of a small business owner because I am myself. And so imagine what it would be for your business if you were to basically not be able to transact, charge, receive, etc., any sort of critical function to your business for a day, 2 days, a week, 2 weeks. That's the new global reality. And so in our practice, again, we specialize and work with logistics providers. But if you're a logistics provider and you can't provide logistics services for 2 weeks, your business is basically dead.
And just to add on to that, really, it's a normal part of business operations. And so as long as business owners start looking at it as it's a business decision and not a cybersecurity thing, because it's integrated with everything we do with business. If you're going to be connected to the internet, if you have credit cards, all those pieces are intertwined, and it's just a normal part of business operations.
Yeah, to echo that, cybersecurity is pretty much the insurance that you get for working on the internet, right? Everyone has to have some sort of car insurance or anything like that. It's just a cost of doing business. There are some nuances to that, right, which hopefully we'll get into, but it's very important, right, as they've already illustrated. Once you get hit, that can cripple your business, right? And we want to avoid that as much as possible, right? So investing it is, in your own interest, in your own self-interest there.
All right, thank you. And again, as we mentioned, I think all of us have already been impacted in one way or another. But one of the other areas that we thought, and I know again, we're working, our audience is primarily small businesses, and many times small businesses don't have the resources to set up, elaborate systems or bring in as consultants and things like that. So one of the questions that we thought we'd ask our panelists to help us with is, when you're starting up, or if your business has been going for a short time, and you're concerned with cybersecurity, is like, where do I begin? Many times small businesses have very limited resources, limited knowledge, and don't really know what to ask or what to prepare for when dealing with cybersecurity.
Okay, well, I'll take, I guess, this one first. So the quickest solution would be come take a couple classes at Laredo College, right? We do have a cybersecurity program, so I'm going to go ahead and sell that, right? You don't have to come through for a full degree, right? You can come take a couple classes, begin to kind of get your feet wet, understand what any of these fine gentlemen will be speaking about when you go meet with them potentially there, or another opportunity. Maybe you don't have the costs associated to hire a very qualified professional. I would recommend hiring one of our graduates, right? They may, as entry-level positions are hard to get into, they may be willing to take a lower salary to get their feet wet. Just understand that potentially they may leave later on for a larger salary or something like that. But yeah, you have local resources. Make sure you use them, right? We're here to help. We're here to educate. Come by.
Yeah, I'd add to that, saying I think the first word of advice would be really careful about what you click on, right? And so the greatest proportion of phishing, ransomware, etc., invasions happen because somebody clicked on a document or a link to a document that they should not have. And so, sounds easy to say. What can you do, right? You can look at the domain top at the the domain address at the top of the email, right? Does that look like a trustworthy organization? Does it end in .com? Does it end in .net, right? Is there an actual lock up at the top, right? Which tells you that it's a safe site that it's come from. Is the language in the email off? Is there something that says, this just doesn't look right? Maybe I should pay attention a little bit more. And I recently have a case just last week of a company that we've worked with in San Antonio for years, lost $130,000 in one day. Payables account, somebody clicked on something they weren't supposed to, they were in a financial capacity. The bad guys entered, basically started to understand what their payment path was, who they paid, manipulated a portion of that. Actually, the FBI entered because it was above $100,000. Could do nothing because the money had already been received overseas. Had they had cybersecurity insurance, which is probably number 4 on that list, right? They might have been able to do something. But the one that all of us are empowered to do is to just slow down a little bit before you start clicking into stuff.
And just thinking about those that are just starting, business owners, we wear a lot of hats, and we try to do all sorts of things, but at the education beginning, as Tekwani was even talking about, it starts there, knowing that needs to be a part of it. And so it means planning, and there's simple hygiene that you can begin doing in the beginning, password hygiene, and just knowing as far as owning your emails instead of the free mails, and controlling what you send, having control of your devices, your information. Even having those things done in the beginning will lead you up to the point where you'll be able to hire someone. There are basic things that can be done, and then as you begin to grow, then you may need to outsource some things or hire someone, and now that'll get you in the way of starting to invest and pay attention to it. But if you don't do it in the beginning, then there's all this debt that you end up in, and it'll cost in the end.
Right. Thank you. Again, dealing with small businesses. This one says, I've gotten advice. I've received advice from friends and acquaintances who had other businesses, and what I should do to protect systems. And besides that, I feel very secure because I'm a small business. And we know that these bad guys that are attacking systems, they usually go after the big name brand companies. So my company doesn't have any visibility. So I'm really not worried, and I feel pretty secure. The bad guys are going after the big name brand businesses. Is this true?
Yes, it's true, but they're going after everyone. And so think about how many of you have received alerts that your information is found in breaches? Big companies are breached, and so your information is already there. Your PII is out there, personal identifiable information. It's there anyhow. So if it's there, you're already a target. So that piece doesn't matter. And might they use small business to get to others? Supply chain attacks, they happen all the time. Just with a recent attack with Uber, they used a contractor to get to Uber. So it doesn't really matter who you are. They don't really know who you are until perhaps they start attacking or do research on you. They don't know the size of your business or anything, and so it's there. So even if you do start the crowdsourcing to get things going, you still have to have the education to find out, is this set up properly? And most times it isn't sufficient for business to be secure. And so then there's all these holes and gaps that will lead an opportunity for a threat actor to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and then an amateur attempt at humor, I'd say find some new friends first, because that's just absolutely categorically not the case, underlined like 3 times. So I was at a conference in Mexico last week, and it's a company called Monex. This is basically an international currency trading house. And one of their cybersecurity executives said that in Mexico, At least 30% of small businesses have been affected by cybersecurity. So if we take that back to Texas or the United States, the number's got to be closer to 40, 50%. So small businesses in many ways are much more vulnerable. An organization like Oracle has literally thousands of people all over the world working in concentric circles all the time, right? So there is no 100% game. I'm quick to tell the folks that I work with, right? By virtue of you working with us, right, does not mean that you will never be attacked or that you will always be safe. This is something that's happening on a global scale. But what is important, I really believe, is that you have made an effort to secure your systems, your data, and your customers' data. And should something happen, knock on wood, and you can have an intelligent conversation, show policies, procedures, show proof of having had an external auditor, not an internal auditor, do what are called vulnerability scans and penetration tests and other things, right? I think that you'll find that you have an empathetic customer and you have a conversation. For those who don't, unfortunately, it's a different conversation.
Yeah, so to add on that, absolutely get new friends for that, as Mr. Love had mentioned. So if anyone has ever, now I don't know the technical expertise out in the field, but I'm going to assume that there's, pretty average, right? But if anyone has ever set up a system on the internet, right, and then log back in like 10 minutes later to check the logs, you will see instantaneously your system is being scanned. Attackers run automatic scripts, right? They're not targeting you. They're just, you're in a range. You're a number on the internet, right? If they find it and there's a vulnerability, they're going to exploit it, right? Why? One, because they can. Two, it might lead to something else, right? Everyone's interconnected these days, so if they can get into your system, maybe you don't have anything that's important to them. Maybe you have information they can sell on the dark web, right? Almost everyone's information is available on the dark web. I think last time I saw it was roughly about $1 per person, right? For your information, whatever the data breach is. It usually depends on how closely it is. Now, another problem that most people will have is they'll reuse credentials, right? So sometimes attacks are not actually targeting you. They're just trying out what credentials will work, right? That's what happened. I know when Disney Plus launched, there were a whole bunch of credentials available on the dark web. And it wasn't because they hacked anyone. It's just they grabbed the credentials from a previous one and tried it out, right? So most of the time, they're not targeting you. They're not targeting small businesses. And the only reason large businesses end up in the internet, I mean, on the news, is generally because they're large businesses. It doesn't mean that small businesses don't get hit. So it is worthwhile to invest in cybersecurity.
Most definitely. Thank you. This question says, is there a framework that I can use to measure to see if my business is at risk of a cyber attack? Or any recommendations you may have that I can measure my systems?
Sure. So I think the first tool is something called the NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. This is a governmental organization, the United States government, right? They have very explicit and clear standards. And so I encourage anybody who's interested in the topic to go out and look at NIST, N-I-S-T. It'll show up as nist.gov. Number two, there's industry profiles, right? Financial services, obviously, tends to be one of the first target groups. But it's important to note that, I mean, you work your way down from there. It could be healthcare professionals, could be transportation, it could be infrastructure, et cetera. It's really against industry as far as I see it. So the thought that, again, I'm too small, or why would anybody be interested in my business or data? Unfortunately, it's just not the case.
And in addition to NIST, their cybersecurity framework and others, there's also the CIS controls, Critical Security Controls Center for Internet Security, and that's been mapped down to 18. And what's nice about it is it simplifies it a bit, but they also cross-map to the NIST cybersecurity framework, and it cross-maps to HIPAA and the FTC safeguards, read their security controls. And so all of these, they're available. And even with PCI, most businesses will use credit cards, and there's a non-compliance fee that many will pay every month. And within their self-assessment questionnaire has all sorts of questions that will help them to increase their cybersecurity posture. And so many times going over the documentation that you receive from those will begin to help you to see, I need to have an inventory of all my devices, an inventory of all my software. I need to have unique passwords. I need to segment my network. And so all those things will begin to educate you from the very beginning. And if you're able to follow them, then it will help you to keep moving forward and improving that security posture according to those different frameworks.
Yeah, so there are a bunch of frameworks. They're all over, they're publicly available. Every government puts them out. Now, it depends kind of where you end up, right? Different countries have different frameworks. If you're working internationally, you may have to work with one as opposed to the other, or both, right? Most of them target kind of some of the same goals. Now, it may be a little, I don't want to say a big ask, but it's obviously another thing on your plate. Now you're going to have to look at other kind of regulations for other types of things. But again, most of them cover most of the same areas, right? There is, like we had mentioned, NIST, they have some special publications depending on what you're looking at. There's also ISO, I believe 27,000, right? And I think that might be for Europe. I don't happen to know if Mexico has anyone specific, or they may accommodate with whatever the United States is doing. But so there are plenty of frameworks, right, and they're freely available. They may be, some long reads if you're looking for, a good night book. Some of those very large white papers might do it. Those are very, very riveting reads. But the benefit to that is a lot of the large businesses have already done all the work for you. If you go out there and how to implement, a NIST in a specific special publication, you will probably find a whole bunch of articles detailing what kind of steps you need to take. Also PCI, right? There are plenty of them out there, right? How do I go about implementing this? And they'll make recommendations and everything like that. So a little bit of research, a little bit of Google foo will kind of go a long way. So there are plenty of frameworks out there. You just kind of need to pick whichever one works best for your business.
They read it at night, they won't sleep.
That'll keep you up all night, right? There you go. Okay, thank you. What can Laredo do to increase cybersecurity awareness?
Yeah, I guess I'll kind of start this one. So it's difficult, right? Most businesses, cybersecurity seems to be a afterthought, right? And that's normal. Cybersecurity is usually not on the top of any business's list. Usually it's like number 14 on that list that I've seen around. And it's unfortunate, right? Because one of the things about cybersecurity is it is not going to make you money, right? It's going to cost you money to invest in cybersecurity. It's an investment, right? It's gonna save you money in the long run, right? You can think of it, if we want to talk about a car, right? You have insurance on your car, but you also have your seatbelt, right? If you didn't have those, you would have a really, really bad day when and if you crash. And with cybersecurity, it's not if you will get hacked, it's when you will get hacked, right? Everyone's going to get hacked at some point. You just want to make sure you have stuff in place so that when it does happen, you're okay, right? And to raise the awareness of it, talk about it, bring it up, subscribe to, whatever news thing, read some stuff, watch some YouTube videos, talk with your buddies about it, take some hacking classes, right? Take some cybersecurity classes, not hacking classes. Sorry about that. There are competitions that you can compete in, right? If you kind of get excited about some of the stuff that's there, right? You can compete in some competitions. You can come to some conferences that the college has. Every year we're trying to host some awareness, so you're more than welcome to come by. I think we're having one in October, actually, October 29th. Good, want to plug that one, right, in the afternoon. But yeah, get involved with the community. The community is always willing to talk to people, right? There'll be plenty of cybersecurity experts screaming from the rooftops, and then they'll complain that no one listens to them, right? So that's one of the issues that's out there.
And just to add to that, what is nice in that community is they're always willing to share. And so those, and whether they're at the college and other areas, they're constantly willing to share things. There's been events with the chamber and others, and so Laredo is doing more about that to educate small business owners. And so as that continues to happen, just make yourself available to just take in something each time, and then what are some things that you can just apply within your business. each time. And as you make that application, then you share that awareness with your employees. Because as business owners become more aware and that's shared among your employees, now it begins to change the culture of the business. It's no different than as you prepare for a fire drill. How come everyone knows what to do when there's a fire drill? Because there's been awareness, there's been practice, they've practiced so for years. And so as that awareness is built up, then you're sharing it, they become educated, and now it becomes just a normal part of their business operations.
Yeah, great points, Chris. Back to what Tetuani said, actually you do want a friend who's a hacker, but you want a certified ethical hacker who will do so on your behalf and then tell you explicitly what the vulnerabilities are so that you can fix them, right? So good hacker, bad hacker, all the same, right? What can Laredo do? Learn from the past, right? I mean, we've had multiple high-profile issues. I won't go there on a local basis, and understand, as my esteemed colleagues have said, it's cost of doing business. And so I have this conversation on a weekly basis. If you call me at 12 o'clock on Friday night because your system is compromised and you haven't done business for 3 days, I will take your phone call and I'll help you. But it will not be the same conversation in terms of cost, effort, and resources as it would have been 3 months prior had you engaged in some of the homework, some of the preparation, some of the things that you could have done. And so that's just reality, cost of doing business. And so it's got to consequentially move from 14, as Tequani says, to maybe, 6, 5 as part of a business policy. You've got to realize how much you've got to lose, I think.
All right. Okay. As our businesses grow, and we all know now that how important it is that we ensure that we look at moving that up from 14 to 6, we should consider also hiring people within our staff that have that expertise and that have taken that Hacker 101 class, right? But what should we look for in selecting the best candidates for cybersecurity positions?
Okay. So you won't find the perfect candidate, right? There are plenty of businesses that are out there and they're looking for a unicorn, right? Someone with 10, 15 years of experience in cybersecurity, all the certifications, all the knowledge, all the background, everything, willing to work for less than 6 figures, right? You're not gonna find that person. You can take a chance on potentially someone that is fresh out of college. That would be my recommendation, right? I would love to see my students employed locally. Most of them actually end up in San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, Houston, right? They all leave. Obviously, they have the skill sets to acquire a position, but no one's hiring, or at least at their particular entry level here in Laredo, which is unfortunate, right? And so these individuals will leave Laredo, and so Laredo loses out on a very, very good asset. So I would say take a chance on someone who's not there, who's not at the level that you may be wanting, right? Look for someone who's excited about cybersecurity, right? Maybe they may lack some technical skills or they may not understand your environment. That can be learned, right? There are plenty of classes, plenty of trainings, everything like that. People can learn the skills, but if they have that passion for cybersecurity and they have that hacker mindset, those are the individuals that you want to hire, right? And you may end up losing them, right? They may, after 5, 10 years, they may end up getting a better offer that you can't compete with. That's okay. You should be under the mindset that we're going to hire people, they're going to, come in, they're going to make our business better, and then eventually they may leave. Maybe at that point you should hire 2 people, one person to be his understudy for eventually when he leaves, you have someone to fill out that role. Something to add on that, you should always require the people that you hire to make documentation on the stuff that they've done, so eventually when they leave, they don't take all that knowledge with them, right? And that's one of the things we do talk to them in class. It is very, very important that cybersecurity individuals and computer technology individuals make documentation. So if they're sick or something happens to them, anyone that can fill that role.
Sure. Yeah, I confirm that. I mean, there's never going to be a 100% ideal candidate. In fact, if you look on indices for the most valuable and desired professional sets, cybersecurity is normally in the top 5. So, what can you do on a local basis, right? I agree with everything that he just said, and I would add a couple of things, right? One, you want somebody, I think sometimes we have this image of an IT professional as being that person that wants to be left alone in front of their computer on the backside of the office. And it's like, oh, are you going to really go talk to Jose? You know, he might snap at you or whatever, or he may not be there, right? You need to have somebody who's an IT professional, but who also communicates, right? Because a lot of the most fundamental intrusions in terms of cybersecurity can be fixed with training. So he or she needs to have some role in the organization where they have enough people skills to be able to communicate and talk with others and people pay attention to them. Number 2, I would always take the 19-year-old guy or girl who is interested in IT, who probably had less experience, but who had a passion for it. And then I would provide them every opportunity in the world to certify themselves against that. So I'm always going to take that route versus somebody who's, 65 years old. There's not many 65-year-old cybersecurity professionals, by the way, because this is just an evolving field. There are people, but it tends to be on the younger side of the paradigm. And there is immense opportunity to invest and build a culture here on the border and in Laredo for those people who understand very specific industries.
There's not much to add to that, but individuals, I mean, you can find those that even are moving into the field from other areas that have certain skill sets, attention to detail, as they mentioned, good communicators. Some that leave other areas, they're actually a good fit because they already have a mindset for these areas. So it really comes down to the passion, as they stated. If they have it, they're going to learn it, and they're going to constantly keep learning, because that's what you have to do. It's constantly changing. The attacks continue to change, and so it's an ever-evolving field. So that if you're not keeping up, then you're going to be left behind.
Great suggestions, and definitely agree with the fact of bringing in somebody with a passion that wants to grow and learn and provide them with the resources to get certified and continue growing. And then the documentation of systems and efforts is vital, because I think we've seen that somebody leaves and they take the knowledge with them, and yeah, you're not set up. Let's see. How large is the risk? I think you may have already answered this. How large is the risk of cyber attacks in Laredo's business sector? I think you've already talked about it, but anything you want to add on?
I mean, yeah, I think we've kind of covered it in broad strokes, but yeah, Laredo is just like every other city, country, organization, right? The risks is the same, right? We've had, as Mr. Love has alluded to, several attacks in the city. Well, the city in large, Laredo and everything like that. So the risks are there. It's not, we're not immune to it. I know sometimes we're kind of huddled away in our little corner and we're like, oh, nothing ever happens in Laredo. There's a lot of stuff that happens in Laredo, just not all of it makes it to the news. But yeah, the risk is there.
And I think something that enlightens many business owners is when they're able to see the failed login attempts to their emails. Some of them have had their remote desktop exposed to the internet. When they start seeing the event log with all the failed login attempts there, with firewalls, the attempts that are happening, then they begin to realize that these things are happening all the time. They just haven't been successful. And so the risk is there. It's constantly happening, as Tekwani mentioned earlier. They're constantly scanning, looking for vulnerabilities. And just like water, they're going to find a way to get to it. And when they do exploit it, either you'll know or you won't. Most times businesses won't know until there's something that pops up on their screen, but many will be exploited and they'll never know. And so that's where the risk is there. If you're able to have the visibility to know what is happening, then it puts you in a better position to respond.
Yeah, and I would add to that saying that I think in some industry basis, our exposure is greater. I think that in the international trade basis, the people engaged in these attacks, there's kind of camps that are less sophisticated. There are camps that are more sophisticated. They understand the business profile they're going after. They would understand that in our international trade community, that these businesses have accounts in Mexico, they have accounts in the US, they have accounts sometimes in Europe and other places. So they're very aware of that. And so in some ways the exposure could be higher, but and I'm generally not an alarmist. I don't want anybody to lose any sleep over this, but I think the clear and easy answer, right, is it's 5 times greater than anybody would ever imagine. It's happening, going to happen, will happen, every scenario you can imagine.
Okay, we've got a little bit of a kind of a case program here. We had a situation, and we won't name the company, but it happened here actually, and they did approach me. This company, an employee did open an email, and the name of the email did have one of their clients on there, and it was listed as an invoice. And they opened it, and the next day they received a message that their files had been locked, and all the files had a new attachment on them, and received a notice saying that you have been hijacked, and if you pay a certain amount of ransom, we will release your files. And the company they figured they were up to date. They had all the spyware, they had the malware, they had all those type of things. But when they reached out for assistance, there was really no resolution. So they did end up working with a nonprofit company that worked as an intermediary and helped them pay the ransom. And they paid it in Bitcoin. And after they paid the ransom, the next day they received a code saying, "Thank you very much. You paid your ransom, it's acceptable, and here's your code." They got the code, and their files were all unlocked. So what would you say, what went wrong, what did they do wrong, and what should they do for the future?
Yeah, I guess I'll start this one. So education, right? In IT, there's usually a saying, and it's like, it's always the user's fault, right? It's the layer 8 issue, which is the user issue. Unfortunately, that's not a very good mindset, right? Because the users, they have another job role, right? As a cybersecurity professional, it's our job to ensure that they're safe, and so part of our responsibility is to educate them. So while it's easy brush off to say, oh, the user misclicked or clicked a bad thing, something like that, it's not going to solve the problem, right? That mentality doesn't solve any kind of issue. So educating the users is usually a very beneficial thing, and there are plenty of videos online, right? YouTube is a great resource. Plenty of our students come in, and they'll be like, oh, I saw this YouTube video, and then we'll go through it in class, and we'll talk about it and everything like that. We'll go through, similar things like that. We talk about ransomware. Several of our students actually go through ransomware attacks in a cyber range that we have, so they get to experience that, they get to see what happens, and attempt to recover out of it. As for that specific case, that's very unfortunate. The easiest solution for that would be make sure your backups are up to date. Right? If you don't have backups, I suggest you develop some sort of method to have backups, and then have backups of your backups. Right? There's a very common saying in IT where 1 is none and 2 is 1. Right? So you should consider that with your backups. Make sure you have at least 2 backups, one directly there, and perhaps the other one off-site, maybe in the cloud. There are plenty of companies that will provide those kind of backups. But absolutely, I think the best thing that would have happened there is probably education. And you'd be surprised how easy it is to fake an email. I think about 2 years ago here, we were having a meeting with an education company out of our university from Monterey or Matamoros, and so I was able to spoof an email from the president Donald Trump at the time, like live with everybody. So it's very, very easy to fake emails. It's not that difficult, and you can of course add attachments. So the the attacks are actually very easy. And I don't know if anyone's been keeping track of it now. They're ransomware as a service now, so you can go on the dark web and you can pay a hacker some sort of money. They can launch a ransomware attack at any company. So education is very, very important, and that would probably be the best way to defend against that.
I'm not convinced that paying ransom is always the best option. I guess the first thing I would ask is, what do you have to lose as an organization? If you're a financial services company, that's a different conversation than it is perhaps for somebody that's in manufacture. Prior to that, I'm going to ask three different things. Can you show me your cybersecurity policies and procedures and send them to me in the next 2 minutes? Don't go, I literally want you to be able to send those to me. Can you show me proof that you've had an external auditor do vulnerabilities and penetration tests in the last 6 months, right? If you don't have either of those, we're not off to a very good start, right? In this company's case, I would have wanted to know that. I would have wanted to know what their exposure was. In my experience, it's pretty extraordinary that you pay and then they just send you a note back saying, thank you, all is good. All is not good because they're still in your systems. And so you still got to find a way to ferret them out or start over literally. So it's not like it's been solved and it's just they're nice people and they're going to walk away and they're not going to do it again, right? So there's multiple layers of complexity there. I understand the desire to get things fixed, right? But in my experience, it's 50-50 if you pay, if you're going to get your data back in a set that you would even be able to recognize it, and or if it's not further encrypted and just a jumble. So in a lot of cases, you paid for something that just is really not of any value.
Yeah, and so Alistair made a nice point that if one never finds out how they were exploited, then there was an associate in northern, I don't remember where they are now, but they got hit, and they said, no problem, we have backups, covered everything, they restored everything. And then a few hours later, they were ransomed again. And that's because they never found out how they were exploited. And they were in the backups. And so as a result of that, they were still able to beacon out and reconnect and launch another attack. And so once one understands how it happened, then it puts you in a position to know how you're going to fix it, how you're going to get them out. And then to learn from these exploits of others. Many of them, whether they're local or public, there's tidbits that you can learn so that now you can begin looking to see, would that happen to me? and if you find find the weaknesses, then you begin to work on them. And if you do that, then it begins to minimize your risk.
Great, thank you. I think we have some handouts that were created by our panel of experts, and if you look at those handouts, they've got some pretty alarming statistics on there. I'd like to open it up for a couple of minutes. If you all have any questions from the audience, anything that you all would like to ask our experts, it's a good opportunity now. Anybody would like to start off with a question on cybersecurity?
Well, if you're talking about maybe whether if it's on a website, HTTPS, that will help you to see if it's encrypted. Unfortunately, many threat actors are using encrypted. They're using encrypted web links as well. So it's still good practice, yes. And as far as email, just if you have control of your email, it's not free mail, then there are measures that you can take to make sure that you are not only filtering them, but looking out for any phishing attacks and anything that has malware and things like that. So there's technology solutions that will help businesses to be able to minimize that risk there.
Probably the easiest thing that you can do is enable some sort of two-factor authentication. That's kind of the lowest level of something, right? Now, not all two-factor authentication are created equal, right? There's the SMS and the emails. Those ones are okay. If there's nothing else, go with those. But if the hacker has access to your emails, then that two-factor authentication doesn't work, right? And there are ways that they can intercept your text messages as well, right? So the best ones would be either some sort of physical token. There's some sort of keys that you can plug into the computer and press a button on it, and it'll give it a code. Or the other one is an app. Google puts one out, Microsoft puts one out. You can have those. A lot of companies are enabling them, right? And so you log in, and it'll ask for the second code. You open up the app on your phone, you put in the code, and you're good to get in, right? So those are some of the easiest ones. But yes, you'd be surprised how much of your stuff is interconnected, right? Because your bank account probably has an email that it may be a personal one, right? And so if the hacker were to get access to your email, suddenly they know you have a bank account, they might know your name, they might do that, forgot the password, and then be able to bypass all that stuff. So the more kind of hurdles that you put in the way for them to get into your account, the better.
And I would add to that to have unique passwords for every account, because then you certainly cut that down instead of using the same one for everything.
Yeah, so to add on to that, if you're gonna do that, I highly recommend investing in a password manager, because I have like 84 unique passwords across like all my accounts, because I have a bunch of related to the college, to personal stuff, to family accounts and everything like that. So I have a password manager, and it's okay to get the free ones, but you may want to look into investing in them, right? And then make sure you have like a 32 character password on that one, because you only have to remember one, right? And then maybe enable two-factor on that one, and do all sorts of other steps, because
She didn't say that.
Yeah, for small scale business, again, not enterprise, Fortune 500, et cetera, I'm a fan of the Cisco set of products, that being Duo, which has got an MFA tool and a password tool that's approachable at a price point that makes sense, and their technology is great, right? But just as soon as I say that, right, Cisco will show up tomorrow morning in the Wall Street Journal having had an issue. So the other point, and I think it kind of goes with that saying, but we're all super busy in our day-to-day lives and our business lives, right? My theory on like Venmo and Cashback and Cash App and those other things is I'm probably going to have that from a personal working account. And if I'm blessed enough to have some large-scale savings, I wouldn't have that account attached to that. So I would separate accounts, and again, kind of layer in and make it ever harder for bad actors to access my materials.
Yeah, that's not connecting it to your main account because you certainly want to minimize what's in there, what could be taken. Not using credit over debit, and so those give them direct access to your accounts. And so if they're compromised, it's cleaned out. When do you get your money back after all this? After they start doing all the reporting and doing it just takes a while. But credit, so there's just some of it just ends up being just some nice best practices that you begin to utilize, personal life and business.
Great advice, definitely. We've got time for one last minute question. Any other questions?
It's easy to clone a website. So making sure you look at the URL. Or the beauty is if you have a password manager, you can click on it, it'll open up that specific site. And with a password manager, the password won't work automatically if you're not on the right website. So there's some pluses with that, but reading the URL, because there are all sorts of phishing sites, cloned websites, and as mentioned, because we're so busy, we may not see those features, and then we input them, and now they have our credentials, and that's it.
Yeah, cloning websites is very, very easy. It's really just a right-click, copy source code. I'll kind of talk a little bit about some of the trouble I got in recently about that. So I created a website, and then the organization found out about it, and then they asked me to take it down. It was for an educational purpose, right? To show students how easy it was. It was in a server over in Australia. The whole thing cost me a couple bucks a month, right? It's not that expensive. There are a bunch of servers that are very small. It's very easy to do. I have no web development background, so if I can do it, any kind of hacker that has any kind of dedicated time can do it, right? And it was the website, as we had mentioned earlier, had a lock on it, right? I was able to simulate an SSL code, right? So the best thing you can do is don't click on links, right? Go to the websites directly. Now, there are some other security risks associated with that, but do that. And then always, my recommendation, input the password wrong the first time, because most of the attacks, they're just skimming your first password, right? So if you put user 1 and then 123, and it says, oh, hey, cool, welcome, right? Then that's probably a bad website, right? Or something like that. Is just capturing your credentials. So be a little skeptical. Don't trust everything. Kind of think you're in a James Bond movie and you're a spy, right? So that's usually a good mindset to have.
Yeah, and I think it's a great question. So kind of three-part, if I remember the three parts. The first part is go find the actual website itself, and that is if you go Google bankofamerica.com, the first 4 or 5 that are going to show up are bankofamerica.com sign up, bankofamerica.com special offer, Bank of America, whatever. Go find the actual website. The second is going to sound silly, but I'm a big believer in this. If you have employees and you're giving them a computer, there is a division of their professional and personal life, right? I'm not giving you this device as your own personal, computer, etc. By virtue of that, if you're so inclined to look at things that you're not supposed to, don't do that on the work computer. That's your personal life. Maybe you do that on another object. I'm not advocating that people do that. I'm just saying, make it real clear. That's also with game websites. There have been multiple issues with professionals who have just handed their laptop or their whatever over to their children, and their children are bored, and they downloaded a game kind of function that seemed rather innocuous, but again, it embedded that. And the third is, I think more and more people are living from their cell phones and accessing websites via that, right? Take those patches from Apple, Samsung, or whatever as soon as they come out. And they come out like every week, every month, etc. It's really, really important to update those.
Great. Well, thank you. We've got one more question. Go ahead.
Yep. Number one, don't go to an airport and plug into a free battery source would be number one. Number two, be real careful about open Wi-Fi sources that you're on. And then I think, we've discussed MFA, and there's multiple other resources available. And then you just have to be careful about the content that you're engaging in, understanding that potentially that's letting a bad actor into your device. Both. That's a great question. Both. Yeah. You don't want anybody physically tethered to your phone. Take your own, or plug it into the wall yourself, or go without. I can tell you, having worked for multiple big tech companies, those being Oracle, SAP, Microsoft, that their internal training manuals, that's like one of the first things they tell you. Do not plug our device into any external device that is not approved.
Yeah, for mobile devices, it's I mean, you can get an antivirus maybe that can probably help, right? There are plenty of mobile antiviruses that are out there, but yeah, most people assume that you can't get hit on your mobile phone, but absolutely you can. They're free open frameworks. We teach a couple of them in some of our classes, right? We create malicious packets, and we do an experiment, and the student's able to gain control of the system, control the audio, watch video, right? So they can see an image of the person on the phone, right? So it's very easy to do, right? There are plenty of walkthrough and tutorials and everything on those. Most of those obviously are patched, right? So we have to use special older phones for that. So patching your system obviously absolutely is very, very important. It's there might be a problem with your battery after you patch it, as we've kind of heard about from Apple. But that's kind of, again, some of the costs of doing business. But being cautious, right? Also not connecting to free Wi-Fi. We also, in our classes, set up, honeypot Wi-Fi things where people connect to our Wi-Fi that says, hey, this is Starbucks. And then we're able to sniff their traffic as it's going over there, right? So it's very easy to do, if we're having, 18, 19-year-old students do it. I'm more than sure, hackers are out there doing it. So yeah, just be careful. Again, kind of be suspicious about everything. Be careful on the links that you click, because phishing email links look different on your computer than they do on your phone. So always be cautious with what you're clicking through, right? Assume that everyone is malicious in some nature, right? And then you should be a little safer in those steps. Don't mean to scare anybody, right?
All right. Well, thank you so much. I mean, I think this is a topic we can continue on with, but we have hit our timeline. And we definitely want to thank our panelists, our experts here. I know that I've learned so much from you all in just these last 2 days that we've been talking. So thank you so much. We truly appreciate this. Of course, we want to thank the college, the chamber, everybody that put this together. So thank you so much. Bye-bye.